The worst part of being used is not the final moment of betrayal. It is the realization that comes long after. The quiet realization that while you were trying to build a connection, they were simply taking notes. They did not attack you right away. A true manipulator rarely does. Instead, they arrived as a friend. They arrived as someone who listened. Someone who seemed deeply interested in your past, your fears, and your boundaries. They smiled. They asked the right questions. And you, believing that honesty builds trust, handed them the map to your mind. You gave them your insecurities. You told them what hurts you. You explained exactly how you handle guilt and anger. You thought you were being understood. But you were actually being studied. Information is never neutral in the hands of the wrong person. Every time you explained too much, you gave them a lever. Every emotional reaction you showed was a test they quietly recorded. They watched how much pressure it took to make you fold. They observed how quickly you forgave. They measured the exact depth of your need for approval. Machiavelli understood this dark reality of human nature centuries ago. He knew that power over another person does not begin with force. It begins with observation. The person who knows where you are soft already has an advantage. If they know guilt works, they will use guilt. If they know anger makes you lose control, they will provoke your anger. In this video, we are not learning how to become like them. We are not learning how to seek revenge. Revenge is a reaction, and reactions are exactly what they want. We are learning how to recognize the quiet tests. We are learning the 5 signs that someone is secretly mapping your vulnerabilities. You are about to understand how human nature truly operates in the shadows. You will learn how to stop mistaking access for loyalty. And most importantly, you will learn how to become a closed book. Because if they cannot read you, they cannot control you. But to protect yourself, you must first recognize how the game begins. And the game always begins with a very subtle test. Most people believe a test of character is obvious. They expect a grand betrayal, a sudden argument, a clear line being crossed. But human nature does not work like a sudden storm. It works like water, quietly finding the cracks in the stone. The first sign someone is secretly studying your weakness is not an open attack. It is a joke. A subtle, perfectly timed emotional trigger. Think back to a conversation with someone you thought you were building a connection with. A colleague. A new friend. A partner. You are sitting together, the atmosphere is relaxed, and you feel safe. And then, out of nowhere, they drop a comment. Maybe it is about your appearance. Maybe it is a slight exaggeration of a mistake you made in the past. Maybe it is a sarcastic remark about something you deeply care about. It is wrapped in a smile. It is delivered with a laugh. But the words carry a tiny drop of poison. If you get upset, they immediately retreat behind the ultimate shield of the manipulator. They say, "I was just joking. Why are you so sensitive?" Or, "You take things way too seriously." You are left feeling confused. You question your own reaction. You wonder if you really are too defensive, or if you are misreading their intentions. So you apologize, or you force a laugh to keep the peace. And in that exact moment, they just wrote down their first major note about you. Why do they do this? They do not do it because they lack social skills. They do not do it by accident. They do it because they need data. A manipulator cannot control a person they do not understand. They need to know where your boundaries are. And more importantly, they need to know how easily you will abandon those boundaries to avoid conflict. When they throw a subtle insult wrapped in a joke, they are fishing for your triggers. They are watching your face closely. Do you look down? Do you immediately start defending yourself? Do you get angry and lose your temper? Or do you laugh along, sacrificing your own dignity just to keep the room comfortable? Every single reaction gives them a piece of the puzzle. If you get angry, they know you lack emotional control. They know they can provoke you whenever they need you to look irrational in front of other people. If you laugh along and swallow your discomfort, they learn something even more valuable. They learn that you value their approval more than your own self-respect. They learn that they can push the line a little further next time. Let us look deeper into the psychology of this passive-aggressive test. Many people who have been used or manipulated carry a deep, quiet need to be understood. When a subtle trigger is pulled, your instinct is to explain. You say, "Actually, I did that because of this reason." Or, "That is not what I meant at all." You think you are clearing up a misunderstanding. But there was no misunderstanding. The comment was designed specifically to make you explain yourself. Because a person who is constantly explaining themselves is a person who is constantly on the defensive. When you over-explain, you hand them power. You are subconsciously asking for their validation. You are proving to them that their opinion of you dictates your emotional state. This is a game of psychological leverage. And you lose the game the moment you step onto the playing field. The manipulator is like a person walking through a dark room, tapping on the walls. They are looking for the hollow spots. Your insecurities are the hollow spots. Your fear of abandonment. Your need to be seen as intelligent. Your anxiety about not being good enough. When they tap on one of these spots and you react emotionally, they hear the echo. They now know exactly where to strike when they truly need to move you. A Machiavellian perspective on power recognizes that true control is rarely visible. Power does not scream. It whispers, and it watches you react. The strategist knows that an enemy who cannot control their emotions is an enemy who has already defeated themselves. If someone can dictate your emotional state with a few carefully chosen words, they own you. They own your focus. They own your energy. They own your peace of mind. You become a puppet, and their subtle comments are the strings. But this dynamic only works if you agree to play the role of the puppet. So, how do you protect yourself when someone tests your triggers? You do not protect yourself by arguing. You do not protect yourself by trying to prove them wrong. And you certainly do not protect yourself by showing them that they hurt your feelings. You protect yourself with the most terrifying weapon in the psychological arsenal. The unbothered pause. When they drop the passive-aggressive joke. When they make the subtle dig. Do not laugh. Do not explain. Do not get angry. Simply stop talking and look at them. Hold eye contact for 3 long, heavy seconds. Let the silence stretch. Let the joke die in the empty air between you. And then, change the subject completely, as if they never spoke. Or, if you must speak, use a calm, flat tone and ask one simple question. What exactly did you mean by that? Force them to explain the insult. A manipulator hates the light. They operate in the gray area of plausible deniability. When you force them to explain the joke, the gray area disappears. The game loses its power, and they are left looking foolish. More importantly, You teach them a critical lesson about who you are. You teach them that you cannot be moved by cheap provocations. You teach them that your emotional gates are locked. You become unpredictable. And a manipulator will rarely waste their time on a target they cannot predict. You have now closed the door to the subtle emotional tests. You have learned to starve them of the reactions they crave. But human nature is persistent. If they cannot provoke you into revealing your weakness in the present, they will try another route. They will not attack your current emotions. They will disguise themselves as a confidant. And they will start digging into your past. This brings us to the second sign. A sign that most people mistake for deep empathy and genuine care. If a manipulator cannot provoke a reaction from you in the present, they will change their strategy. They will stop attacking the walls you have built. Instead, they will ask for the key to the basement. This brings us to the second sign that someone is secretly mapping your mind. They become overly inquisitive about your past failures and your deepest wounds. And they do it under the perfect disguise of empathy. Imagine a scenario that has likely happened to you. You meet someone new. It could be a new romantic interest, a new business partner, or someone who wants to be your close friend. Very early in the relationship, they create an atmosphere of intense intimacy. They sit close. They lower their voice. They look you directly in the eyes with an expression of profound care. And then, they ask the heavy questions. What is your biggest regret? Why did your last relationship end so badly? What is the worst betrayal you have ever experienced? To a person who has been emotionally starved, or someone who carries the heavy burden of being misunderstood, this sudden interest feels like a rescue. You think to yourself, finally, someone who wants to understand the real me. Finally, someone who is not afraid of my dark side. So, you open the door. You tell them the story of how your former partner lied to you. You tell them how your last business failed because you trusted the wrong investor. You explain your family trauma, your childhood insecurities, and your deepest fears of abandonment. You believe you are building a bond. You believe that by sharing your broken pieces, you are proving your authenticity. But you are making a fatal miscalculation. You are confusing the speed of connection with the depth of character. You are confusing predatory curiosity with genuine care. Why does a manipulator want to know your past? Because your past is the exact blueprint of your psychological structure. They do not view your history as a beautiful story of survival. They view it as an instruction manual on how to break you. When you tell them exactly how your last partner betrayed you, you are not just sharing a memory. You are giving them the exact formula of what destroys your trust. When you confess that you always felt like a burden to your parents, you are handing them the exact button to push when they want to make you feel small. They sit there, nodding, perhaps even holding your hand. But inside their mind, they are filing away every detail. They note that the fear of being replaced makes you panic. They note that feeling undervalued makes you work twice as hard to prove your worth. They note that you have a habit of staying in toxic situations much longer than you should. And they will use this data. Not immediately. A skilled observer is incredibly patient. They will wait months until you are fully invested in the dynamic. And then, during a disagreement, the mask will slip. Watch what happens when you try to set a boundary with them later. They will weaponize that exact trauma to win a casual argument. If your wound is a fear of abandonment, the moment you disagree with them, they will threaten to leave. If your wound is feeling inadequate, they will casually compare you to someone else, just to watch you scramble for their approval. They use your own history to keep you in line. A Machiavellian perspective on human nature warns us about the immense danger of early confessions. In the politics of the Renaissance, leaders were advised to heavily guard the vulnerabilities of their states. If a foreign ambassador visited a castle, they were shown the grand halls, the gold, and the marching armies. They were never shown the crumbling wall at the back of the fortress. Your past traumas are that crumbling wall. Power belongs to the one who holds the most information while revealing the least. When you offer your deepest secrets to someone who has not yet proven their loyalty through time and action, you are handing your sword to a stranger and simply hoping they do not cut you. So, how do you protect yourself when someone probes deeply into your history? You must learn the strategic art of the delayed reveal. When someone you do not fully know asks a heavy, probing question, you do not owe them the raw, bleeding version of your story. Give them the summary, not the details. If they ask why your last relationship failed, you do not need to give them a 3-hour explanation of your heartbreak. You simply say, "We wanted different things in life," and then you stop talking. If they ask about a past failure, you say, "It was a difficult lesson, but I learned a lot from it." And then, you redirect the conversation. Ask them a question in return. Watch their reaction when you refuse to bleed for their entertainment. A safe person will respect the boundary and let the topic go. A manipulator will look frustrated. They might push harder. They might even use the ultimate trap phrase, saying, "You can trust me, you know. I am not like the others." Remember this absolute rule of human behavior. Trust is not built by trading traumas in the dark. Trust is built by observing consistent behavior in the light. Your past is your private property. You do not owe anyone a tour of your ruins. Become someone who reveals information slowly, based on evidence, not emotion. But what if you master this? What if you keep your past hidden and give them nothing to use against you? A truly dangerous observer will not stop there. If they cannot study your past, and they cannot provoke you directly, they will take a step back. They will start watching how you interact with everyone else. And this third sign is the one almost everyone completely ignores. Most people believe that observation only happens when two people are speaking directly. That is a dangerous assumption. A skilled manipulator knows that when you are talking to them, you are fully prepared. You know they are listening. Your guard is up. Your social mask is perfectly tied. So, they stop looking at how you interact with them. They start watching how you interact with the rest of the world. This brings us to the third sign: someone is secretly mapping your mind. They study your reactions to third parties. Think of a time you were out in public with this person. Perhaps you were at a restaurant, and the server made a mistake with your order. Perhaps you were driving, and someone suddenly cut you off in traffic. Or maybe you were in a high-pressure meeting at work, and a manager unfairly blamed you for a problem. In these moments of sudden friction, notice what the person next to you does. A normal friend might jump in to defend you. A normal friend might express sympathy or share your frustration. But the person who is secretly studying your weakness does something entirely different. They become completely still. They become very quiet. They sit back, and they watch your face. Why do they do this? Because unexpected stress is the ultimate truth serum. When a sudden conflict happens, you do not have time to prepare your mask. You react purely on instinct. And your instinct is exactly what they want to map. They are looking for your hierarchy of respect and your threshold for pressure. If the server makes a mistake, do you lose your temper? Do you feel the need to assert dominance over someone who cannot fight back? If so, they note that your ego is fragile, and you need to feel superior to feel safe. If a manager raises their voice at you, do you immediately shrink? Do you ever apologize for something that was not your fault just to make the tension disappear? If so, they note that you are terrified of authority and conflict. They now know that if they ever need you to comply, all they have to do is slightly raise their voice and create a tense atmosphere. You will fold. Not because you agree with them, but because your nervous system cannot handle the discomfort of their disapproval. They also watch how you handle unexpected praise or attention from others. Do you become arrogant? Do you become overly attached to the person complimenting you? If they see that a few kind words can buy your absolute loyalty, they know exactly how cheaply you can be bought. They know they only need to feed your ego occasionally to keep you firmly under their control. A Machiavellian perspective on power recognizes that indirect observation yields the purest intelligence. In the courts of the Renaissance, a smart diplomat never judged a rival by how polite they were at the dinner table. They judged them by how they treated their servants when they thought the performance was over. Direct questioning often leads to deception. If you ask someone if they are brave, they will say yes. If you ask someone if they are patient, they will claim they are. But if you watch them when a sudden storm hits, the truth reveals itself instantly. The person sitting next to you is using the chaos of the world as a testing ground for your character. They are watching to see if your words match your reflexes. You may have told them that you are strong, independent, and secure. But if they see you panic the moment someone challenges you, your words no longer matter. They have seen the blueprint. This is where human nature quietly changes direction. You might think, so what if they see me get angry in traffic? So what if they see me avoid conflict at work? It matters because they are building a predictive model of your behavior. If they know you are terrified of public embarrassment, they will strategically pick argument with you in public spaces. They know you will surrender immediately just to keep people from staring. If they know you need to be seen as the nice person, they will accuse you of being selfish whenever you try to say no to them. They are not just watching your reactions. They are taking inventory of the weapons they can use against you later. How do you defend against silent observation? You cannot control the sudden stresses of the world. People will make mistakes. Traffic will happen. Managers will be unfair. You cannot stop the person next to you from looking. But you can absolutely control what they see. The defense mechanism is emotional consistency. It is the practice of untangling your internal state from external chaos. When the sudden conflict arises, do not react on instinct. Pause. Take one deep, invisible breath. Treat the server with the exact same calm respect you would show a CEO. If someone raises their voice, do not raise yours to match them, and do not shrink to appease them. Hold your ground with a flat, unemotional tone. Let the silence do the heavy lifting for you. If they ask you later why you did not get angry, or why you did not react, do not over-explain. Simply say, there was no need. This simple sentence is a psychological wall. It tells the observer that you dictate your own energy. It tells them that their attempts to map your chaos will yield absolutely nothing. When the manipulator watches you maintain absolute calm under sudden pressure, their notes become useless. They realize that your emotional gates are not easily breached. They realize you are not a machine that dispenses a predictable reaction every time a button is pushed. You become a closed system. But what happens when the silent observation fails? What happens when they cannot provoke you directly, and they cannot read your reactions to the world? They will not give up. They will simply change the lock they are trying to pick. If they cannot steal your weakness, they will try to buy it. And they will pay for it using the oldest, most dangerous psychological trap in human history. They will give you a fake piece of themselves. And they will expect your deepest truth in return. The most effective way to steal a secret is not to demand it. It is to trade for it. But what happens when the coin they use for the trade is entirely counterfeit? This brings us to the false sign that someone is secretly mapping your vulnerabilities. They use the weapon of false vulnerability, also known as the reciprocity trap. Imagine a late-night conversation or a quiet moment in a coffee shop. The person sitting across from you suddenly changes their demeanor. They lower their voice. They look away, pretending to hesitate. They let out a heavy sigh, as if they are about to burden you with something profound. And then, they confess a weakness. They might say, "I have been feeling really insecure about my career lately." Or, "Sometimes I feel like my family does not really understand me." Or, "I have a really hard time trusting people because of a bad friendship in college." When you hear this, an automatic psychological trigger fires inside your brain. Human beings are deeply wired for reciprocity. When someone buys you a coffee, you feel the urge to buy them lunch. When someone gives you a compliment, you instinctively search for a compliment to give back. This rule applies to physical objects, but it applies even more intensely to emotional currency. When they hand you a piece of their vulnerability, you feel an immense, invisible pressure to hand them a piece of yours. You do not want them to feel alone. You do not want to seem cold, distant, or superior. Because you are empathetic, you want to balance the emotional scale. So, you open your mouth, and you match their confession. But you do not just match it. You usually exceed it. Because honest people do not measure their trauma before they speak. They gave you a minor, highly curated insecurity. And in return, you give them the darkest, most painful chapter of your life. They handed you a pebble, and you handed them a gold mine. The exchange feels deeply intimate in the moment. You walk away thinking, "We really bonded today. We are so close now." But let us dissect what actually happened in the shadows of that conversation. Their confession was not a loss of control. It was a calculated investment. They did not share their secret because they needed your comfort. They shared it because it was the price of admission to your deepest fears. Look closely at the nature of the secret they gave you. It is almost always a safe weakness. Saying, "I work too hard," or "I care too much," or "I am a little insecure about my new job," are not fatal flaws. They are socially acceptable struggles. If you were to weaponize those secrets against them in the future, they would not cause any real damage. But look at what you gave them in return. You gave them the story of how your child had destroyed your self-worth. You gave them the exact details of the betrayal that still gives you nightmares. You gave them the blueprint of your deepest shame. The exchange was completely asymmetrical. They are wearing armor, why you just took yours off. A Machiavellian perspective on human behavior suggests that a calculated display of weakness is often the ultimate act of aggression. In classical military strategy, a general will sometimes order a fake retreat. They will make their army look disorganized and weak, encouraging the enemy to leave the safety of their fortress and chase them into an open field. Once the enemy is in the open, the trap closes, False vulnerability is a psychological fake retreat. They lower their emotional shield just enough to make you feel safe lowering yours. And once your secrets are out in the open, they carefully collect them, categorize them, and store them for the future. This is why, months later, when the relationship turns toxic, you are left completely bewildered. You think, how can they use this against me? They know exactly how much this hurts. They know this because I told them in our most intimate moment. That is exactly why they are using it. They did not listen to your pain to help you heal it. They listened to it to learn where to aim. So, how do you defend yourself against the reciprocity trap? How do you stay safe without becoming a cold, heartless person who never connects with anyone? You protect yourself by mastering the empathetic mirror. When someone offers you a sudden, unearned confession early in a relationship, you must recognize the pressure to reciprocate. Feel that uncomfortable pull in your chest. Notice the urge to say, I understand, I also went through this terrible thing. And then, deny the urge. Do not trade your trauma. Instead, offer them pure, reflected empathy. Look them in the eye and say, thank you for sharing that with me. That sounds really difficult. How are you handling it now? Notice what you just did. You validated their feelings. You showed respect for their vulnerability. But you gave them absolutely no ammunition. You kept the focus entirely on them. Watch their reaction when you do this. A person who genuinely needed to vent will appreciate your listening ear. They will continue talking about their issue, grateful for the safe space. But a manipulator will look disappointed. The conversation will suddenly stall. They will realize that their coin was rejected. They threw the bait, and you refused to bite. You have proven that your boundaries are not controlled by social pressure. You have proven that your mind is a fortress that cannot be unlocked with a cheap emotional trick. You are learning to keep your power. But what if they do not need you to speak at all? What if they realize that your secrets are locked away and your reactions are completely controlled? A truly dangerous observer will stop trying to extract information from your words. They will start looking at what you quietly refuse to let go of. They will start tracking the things you are terrified to lose. And this brings us to the fifth, and perhaps the most devastating sign of all. When a truly dangerous observer realizes that your mind is guarded, they will pivot. They will accept that you will not give them your past. They will accept that your emotional triggers are hidden. But they know that human beings cannot exist in total isolation. Everyone needs something. Everyone relies on something. And this brings us to the fifth and most systematic sign that someone is mapping your vulnerabilities. They begin tracking your dependencies. A dependency is anything outside of yourself that you feel you cannot live without. It might be a physical reality, like financial security. It might be a social reality, like your reputation or the approval of a specific group of friends. Or, most commonly, it is an emotional reality. The need to feel useful. The need to be desired. The need to avoid loneliness at all costs. Think about the subtle questions they ask when you are just having a casual conversation about your life. They will ask about your living situation. They will ask about your job, but not out of professional curiosity. They will ask how much you depend on your current boss. They will ask if you have savings, or if you live paycheck to paycheck. They will watch how you act when your phone rings and it is your family calling. Do you look anxious? Do you look desperate for their approval? They are gathering an inventory of the pillars that hold your life up. Why are they doing this? Because the ultimate form of control is not violence, and it is not even persuasion. The ultimate form of control is monopoly. If they can figure out what you desperately need, they will slowly position themselves as the sole provider of that exact thing. If they notice that you have a deep, unhealed fear of being alone, they will flood you with attention. They will text you constantly. They will spend every waking moment with you. They will make you feel like you are the center of their universe. And then, once your nervous system becomes completely dependent on their presence, they will start pulling back. They will take hours to reply. They will become cold and distant for no logical reason. This is a calculated withdrawal of the supply you now depend on. They watch you panic. They watch you lower your boundaries, abandon your standards, and chase them, just to restore the feeling of connection. They did not force you to obey. They simply cut off the oxygen and watched you beg for air. But dependencies are not always about affection. Sometimes, they track your need to be a good person. Many people who have been severely manipulated are highly empathetic. They have a deep psychological need to help, to fix, and to save others. If the manipulator senses this is your dependency, they will never try to dominate you. Instead, they will play the victim. They will become the broken bird that only you can heal. They will constantly present you with crises, bad luck, and emotional emergencies. They know that you are addicted to being the savior. By keeping themselves in a constant state of need, they ensure that you will never leave them. You become trapped by your own virtue. A Machiavellian perspective on strategy teaches a harsh truth about warfare and human nature. In classical history, a general rarely wasted his army by attacking a heavily fortified castle wall. It was too costly. It was too risky. Instead, the general would simply find the river that supplied the castle with water and block it. The people inside the castle could have the thickest walls in the world. They could have the sharpest swords. But if they are dying of thirst, they will eventually open the gates and surrender on their own. Your dependencies are your water supply. The person secretly studying you is looking for the river. They are looking for the exact thing you need to survive, so they can dam it up and control the flow. If they control the flow, they control you. So, how do you defend yourself against someone who is mapping your dependencies? You must practice the difficult discipline of emotional diversification. A table with one leg will collapse the moment that leg is kicked. A table with 4 strong legs can withstand a tremendous amount of force. Never allow one single person to become your only source of validation. Never allow one single relationship to be your only escape from loneliness. When you feel yourself becoming entirely dependent on someone's approval, you must intentionally step back. You must build alternative pillars in your life. Cultivate hobbies that require solitude. Maintain friendships that have nothing to do with this person. Secure your own finances. Remind your nervous system that you can survive perfectly well in the quiet company of yourself. When the manipulator attempts to pull back their attention to test your dependency, do not chase them. Let the silence sit. Let them withdraw. When they see that you are perfectly fine without their validation, the tactic completely shatters. They realize that they cannot starve a person who knows how to feed themselves. You have now recognized the 5 signs. You know how they test your emotional triggers. You know why they dig into your past. You know they observe your reactions to stress. You understand the trap of false vulnerability. And you know how they map your dependencies. But understanding the enemy's strategy is only half the battle. To truly protect yourself permanently, you must change the way you move through the world. You must adopt the ultimate Machiavellian defense. And this defense requires you to become something that manipulators fear more than anything else. You now know the 5 signs. You know how they test your emotional triggers with subtle jokes. You know why they dig into your past to find your unhealed wounds. You know they observe your reactions to sudden stress. You understand the dangerous trap of false vulnerability. And you know how they systematically map your dependencies to cut off your air supply. But recognizing the trap is not the same as disarming it. Observation without action is just passive suffering. Many people who realize they are being manipulated make a critical mistake at this exact stage. When they discover the truth, their instinct is to fight back. They become angry. They confront the manipulator. They send long, emotional text messages explaining how hurt they are. They try to expose the manipulator to other people. Or they go to the other extreme. They become bitter, completely cold, and build massive walls of aggression to keep everyone away. Both of these reactions are terrible strategic mistakes. Why? Because anger and bitterness are still emotional reactions. If you confront them with anger, you are still giving them your energy. You are still proving that they have the power to destabilize your mind. And if you become a bitter, isolated person, the manipulator still wins, because they have permanently changed your character. A Machiavellian defense does not rely on anger. It does not rely on proving that you are right. It relies on a concept that is deeply terrifying to anyone who seeks to control others. Strategic unpredictability. Think about how a manipulator operates. They are essentially gamblers. They study your history, your habits, and your fears to calculate the odds of your next move. If they push this button, they bet you will cry. If they pull this string, they bet you will apologize. Their entire power depends on your consistency. They need you to be a predictable machine. So, how do you destroy their power without ever raising your voice? You break the machine. You become formless. You stop acting like the version of yourself that they have mapped out in their mind. If they have mapped you as someone who always over-explains when accused, change the code. The next time they accuse you of something unfair, do not write a paragraph in defense. Look at them calmly, say, "I see you feel that way," and walk out of the room. Watch their system crash. They will not know what to do, because this reaction was not in their notes. If they have mapped you as someone who is terrified of their silent treatment, change the code. When they withdraw their attention to punish you, do not chase them. Do not ask what is wrong. Act completely unbothered. Go out with your friends. Focus intensely on your work. Treat their silence not as a punishment, but as a peaceful vacation. When they realize their ultimate weapon has absolutely no effect on you, they will panic. A Machiavellian perspective suggests that an enemy cannot attack a target they cannot understand. In classical strategy, a fortress that constantly changes its layout is impossible to conquer. The enemy generals will burn their mats, frustrated and exhausted, and they will move on to an easier target. You must become that shifting fortress. This does not mean you become chaotic or unreliable to the good people in your life. Strategic unpredictability is a weapon you only use against those who are trying to study your weakness. To master this, you must adopt 3 strict rules of engagement. Rule number 1 is the 24-hour delay. Whenever this person tries to provoke you, trigger you, or demand a heavy emotional commitment, You never respond in the moment. You tell them, "Let me think about that," or "I will get back to you." A manipulator thrives on urgency. They want you to react while your heart rate is high. By forcing a 24-hour delay, you drain all the emotional tension from the interaction. You respond only when you are cold, logical, and entirely in control. Rule number 2 is the practice of neutral agreement. When they try to insult you subtly, do not fight the insult. Agree with the premise in a way that makes the insult useless. If they say, "You are always so selfish with your time," do not defend your generosity. Simply say, "You are right. I am prioritizing my peace right now." When you do not defend yourself, their attack hits empty air. They want a wall, and you give them a mirror. Rule number 3 is mastering presence without access. You do not always have to block someone, run away, or create a massive dramatic exit. Sometimes, true power is sitting in the same room with them, being perfectly polite, but giving them absolutely nothing real. You talk about the weather. You talk about the news. You smile. But the gates to your inner world are locked, welded shut, and guarded by silence. You let them look at the walls, but you never let them inside again. When you practice strategic unpredictability, a profound shift happens inside your mind. You realize you are no longer the victim waiting for the next test. You are the one holding the pen. You are the one dictating the terms of reality. Their maps are burning. Their data is useless. And they are finally looking at a person they can never hope to control. But this journey does not end with outsmarting a manipulator. If you stop here, you are still letting them define your life. You must take one final step to truly secure your mind and your future. When you finally realize that someone has been quietly studying your weaknesses, your first instinct is usually grief. You mourn the connection you thought you had. You feel foolish for opening up. You wonder why you are always the one who explains too much, trusts too easily, and forgives too quickly. But you must stop looking at your vulnerability as a failure. Your empathy is not a flaw. Your desire to build an honest connection is not a weakness. The only mistake you made was giving the most valuable parts of yourself to someone who had not yet earned the right to hold them. Machiavelli understood that the world is divided into 2 types of people: those who react to the game, and those who observe it. For a long time, you were the one reacting. You danced to their subtle jokes. You answered their probing questions. You panicked when they withdrew their attention. But that version of you ends today. You are no longer the naive participant. You are now the quiet observer. You understand that when a manipulator studies your weakness, they are actually revealing their own. They are revealing their desperate need for control. They are showing you that they are terrified of a fair, open dynamic, which is why they must operate in the shadows of your insecurities. From this moment on, you will move differently through the world. You will no longer confuse access with loyalty. You will not trade your deep traumas for their fake confessions. You will diversify your emotional dependencies so that no single person holds the key to your peace of mind. And most importantly, you will embrace the terrifying power of strategic unpredictability. You will become a closed book to those who only wish to exploit the story. Do not leave this video looking for enemies in every corner. That is just another form of being controlled by fear. Leave this video looking for patterns. Watch how people react when you say no. Notice who disappears when you stop over-explaining yourself. Observe who stays when they can no longer pull your emotional strings. The person who understands human nature rarely needs to fight for their dignity. They simply quietly enforce their boundaries and watch the manipulators eliminate themselves. If one lesson or one specific sentence stayed with you today, write it in the comments below. Not for me, and not for the algorithm. Write it for yourself. Sometimes, the standard you choose to write down is the standard you finally decide to live by. If you are ready to stop being easily moved and want to master the art of psychological self-protection, subscribe to the channel. We will continue to explore the dark, silent realities of human nature. Stay calm, stay unpredictable, and stay powerful.